Welcome to the Reasonable Southerner podcast. The South isn't all magnolias in the moonlight, but neither is it all racism and violence. We are just like you. My name is Frances Coleman. I share my insights about my life and yours. Welcome to Alabama, my younger self. Here you are, just 24 years old, moving to a little town in Baldwin County in advance of your wedding. A native of the South, you'd never been to Alabama before you met your fiancé. You knew almost nothing about Mobile, and embarrassingly, you didn't even realize that Alabama has Gulf beaches. So much for elementary school geography classes. The pièce de résistance. Until making it your home, the only cities you'd associated with Alabama were Montgomery, Selma, and Birmingham, all in the context of beatings, bus boycotts, and bombings. I won't try to tell you that parts of Alabama's past aren't deep, dark, and ugly. They are. More than 40 years after you moved here, we are still contending with the legacies of slavery, the Civil War, Jim Crow, segregated schools, and entrenched poverty. As for our politics, what can I say? You're coming into the state at an interesting time, in 1978, when voters appear to be turning away from the politics of the past. You'll see them elect a governor named Fob James, who brags about his business background and lack of political experience. Alas, he won't turn out to be the new South governor a lot of people were hoping for. In fact, when he serves another term in the 1990s, James will reveal himself to be one more phony populist politician. And by the time you or me, Alabama politics will have gotten worse, not better. You will have elected a former football coach to represent Alabama in the U.S. Senate, who has about as much business being in the Senate as I do calling plays and picking quarterbacks. Not that you're a stranger to ignorant and corrupt politics. No one who's a native of Louisiana can claim she's never seen lying, cheating, stealing politicians, including some who've spent some time behind bars. I wish it weren't going to be the case, but before long you'll realize that politics and politicians in Alabama are just as bad as the ones you left behind. There's no replacement for that Louisiana, I know you're a crook, but I love you anyway, charm that politicians in the Pelican State have radiated from the time of Huey Long to the recently deceased Edwin Edwards. If you haven't already heard it, you'll soon hear the expression, "Thank God for Mississippi," and you'll come to understand that Alabamians have wasted precious time being grateful that even if we are impoverished or uneducated or unhealthy or misguided or poorly led or all of the above, well, there's always a state that's worse off. Both states have their share of the aggressively stupid citizens with whom the rest of the nation identifies as all. Still, there are plenty of smart, thoughtful people in Mississippi and Alabama. The region isn't a third world country, and I'm always amazed when people who would set themselves above us squalid Southerners are horrified when it's suggested to them that that kind of thinking is, well, bigoted. There's a lot about the South that is easy to misunderstand. I knew a young man who lived in the South for a time. His family commiserated with the horror of his having to live down here. I would point out that he lived in New Orleans, a city with a raucous charm all its own. You would have thought he was trapped in a 1960s movie set with Big Daddy in a seersucker suit and a gaggle of oppressed black folks seething with hatred and resentment. His most notable comment was what he said about a sign in Mississippi that proclaimed that state the home of the blues. How, he asked, could anyone celebrate music created by oppressed black people? How could the state that held black people down for so long be proud of their unique musical expression. How could the state not be proud? He didn't get what a lot of people who don't understand the South don't get about it. Black people, black culture, and black creative energy in music, art, food, and dance is a part of Southern life that makes me proud to be from the same part of the country as they are. Were and are black people oppressed? Of course they were and are. It's a terrible stain on my native and my adopted state. It doesn't matter that black folks are oppressed in a lot of other places. That doesn't excuse the oppression we have visited on our fellow Southerners. That behavior cannot and must not define us. So why stay in Alabama or anywhere else in the South? Because although it has many faults and flaws, Alabama also has some wonderful attributes. Our people are remarkably diverse. You'll meet farmers and philosophers, teachers and preachers, and folks of varying incomes and outlooks. You'll witness kind and caring people bending over backward to help neighbors and strangers alike. You'll fall in love with those beaches you didn't know existed. You'll discover that the Appalachian Mountains extend well into North Alabama. You'll see Mother Nature's majesty on display in the Mobile-Tensas River Delta. You'll find yourself looking forward to the day that you and your husband can find some acreage on which you can build a home and rear a family. As the years pass, you'll become part of the coastal Alabama culture with its rich food and its distinct accents and the ties that bind it much more closely to New Orleans and Biloxi than to, say, Anniston or Decatur or Florence. As it gradually owns you, you'll gradually claim ownership of Alabama and everything that such ownership entails. You'll develop a career, young woman, in which you can advocate for political and social change. And like many other Alabamians, you and your husband will rear your children to work for a better and more prosperous state whose people aren't satisfied with thanking God for Mississippi or anywhere else. Profound change takes time, of course, so when you hit my age, be prepared to find that Alabamians are still wrestling with the ghost of the past and still struggling, football coaches aside, to consistently elect visionary leaders who will chart a new course. It's easy to keep the old hatreds and prejudices alive. If you're one of those charming or not so charming crooked politicians, you know there's a lot of power in that hatred. The people who got Coach Tommy Tuberville elected to the Senate did so with the kind of wicked political precision that mocks the idea of self-government. I can see them picking names and testing their recognition and seeing who'll best attract an electorate supercharged and enraged by hate and divisiveness that has not been seen since the darkest days of the struggle for civil rights. Those prejudices will destroy our nation if we let them, but there is hope, thankfully, because you know the innate good in most people. You'll have found reason to believe, not just in the people you've come to love, but also in the state you've come to call home. For the younger you, the older me, and the generations who come after us, may this belief one day translate into a better Alabama. I'm Frances Coleman. I've worked for newspapers for more than 45 years, from Texas to my native Louisiana, and finally to my home near Mobile, Alabama. I've been a reporter, an editorial writer, a columnist, and an editorial page editor. I've commented on the BBC, been a guest on the Rachel Maddow Show, and had my column distributed nationwide. If you like this podcast, please follow it. It's free, and even if you don't like it, I hope you'll find it thought-provoking.